At exactly 2:43 p.m. this afternoon, I watched a daughter destroy her father's presidency with just 7 words. 7 words that ended 18 months of legal warfare and 30 years of untouchable immunity. I'm Jack Smith, and in 3 decades of federal prosecution, I've never seen anything like what happened in Courtroom 4C today. The 7 words? He asked me to hide the documents. But here's what you did not see on the news tonight. You did not see Trump's hands start trembling when his daughter walked through those mahogany doors. You did not see his lead attorney's face drain of color before Ivanka even sat down. And you definitely did not see what I saw in her eyes as she looked at the man who taught her everything about power, knowing she was about to take it all away. Let me walk you through the 23 minutes that just changed American history forever. I've prosecuted war criminals who showed more composure than what I witnessed today. When Ivanka entered that witness stand, she was not the polished executive we've seen on television. Her voice was steady, but I caught a micro-tremor when she said the word defendant instead of father. That is when I knew we were not dealing with selective memory or family loyalty. We were dealing with someone who had made peace with destroying the person she loved most. The prosecutor started simple. Miss Trump, did you have access to your father's private study at Mar-a-Lago during 2024? Yes, I helped organize his personal files there. That is when Trump leaned forward. I've seen that body language before in organized crime prosecutions. It is the moment a defendant realizes their carefully constructed alibi is about to crumble. Did you ever observe classified materials in that study? Ivanka paused. 3 seconds of silence that felt like 3 hours. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I have photographs. The courtroom froze. Trump's attorney shot up like he'd been electrocuted. Objection, Your Honor. We were not provided. Overruled. The witness may proceed. What happened next will be studied in law schools for generations. Ivanka did not just describe seeing classified documents. She had been secretly documenting them for months. Photo after photo, timestamp after timestamp. Her own father and his personal study handled materials marked top secret like they were newspaper clippings. But the devastating moment came when she described a conversation from July 2024. Trump had asked her to reorganize his filing system because visitors might misunderstand what they see. When she asked which files, he pointed to a stack of intelligence briefings and said, "These need to disappear until the heat dies down." He asked me to hide the documents. Those 7 words. That was the moment I watched the most powerful man in America become just another defendant, caught by his own family. The defense team's strategy had been bulletproof until that moment. They planned to argue Trump did not know what documents he had, that staff handled everything, and that he was too busy with presidential duties to micromanage paperwork. Ivanka just testified that not only did he know exactly what he had, but he actively involved his daughter in concealing evidence from federal investigators. Here's the detail that makes this case a slam dunk for prosecution. When Ivanka described helping reorganize those files, she mentioned a specific document that caught her attention, a CIA assessment about ongoing operations in Eastern Europe, marked with the highest classification level. Trump had written personal notes in the margins, including phone numbers and contact information. My father treated classified intelligence like his personal diary, she testified. He would read these assessments and call people to discuss what he'd learned. Do you understand what that means? A former president was potentially sharing active intelligence with unauthorized individuals. That is not document retention. That is espionage. The constitutional implications are staggering. We now have direct testimony from a family member that Trump knowingly compromised national security information. The classification system that protects American agents and military operations worldwide was treated like a personal reference library. What makes Ivanka's testimony legally bulletproof is something most people will not understand. In federal court, family members who testify against each other are given enormous credibility by juries. Why? Because family loyalty is one of the strongest human bonds. When someone breaks that bond to tell the truth, juries assume the testimony must be incredibly compelling. The defense barely cross-examined her. They knew any aggressive questioning would make her more sympathetic. Instead, they tried damage control, asking if she might have misunderstood her father's instructions. I have a master's degree in business administration and served as a senior White House advisor, she said. I understood exactly what he was asking me to do. Game over. But the story gets worse for Trump. During redirect examination, the prosecutor asked about other family members. Ivanka mentioned that Eric and Donald Jr. were present during several of these conversations about document handling. Suddenly, Trump's composure completely shattered. His shoulders sagged. His breathing became visible. For the first time since I've known him, he looked like what he actually is, a 78-year-old man who just realized his own children are going to testify about his crimes. The most damaging evidence came when Ivanka described a phone conversation from December 2024. Trump called her 3 days before a scheduled FBI compliance review, telling her to make sure the housekeeping staff knows which rooms are off limits. That phone call proves ongoing obstruction of justice. Even after multiple subpoenas, even after swearing under oath that everything had been returned, Trump was still trying to conceal evidence. That is not forgetfulness. That is consciousness of guilt. Here's what happened after the hearing that you not read anywhere else. I watched Trump's legal team panic. They were not strategizing. They were calculating their own exposure. When your star witness is the defendant's daughter and she provides evidence that contradicts sworn statements, everyone in that room starts thinking about self-preservation. The immunity deal Ivanka negotiated was not just about her testimony. She provided physical evidence. Those photographs on her phone, they are now prosecution exhibits. The documents she helped hide, they were found exactly where she said they'd be. This case now has something I've never seen in 30 years of federal prosecution. A completely unimpeachable witness with photographic evidence of ongoing criminal conduct. Ivanka chose the Constitution over family loyalty, and that choice just saved American democracy. The implications extend far beyond one family's legal problems. Every security clearance holder in government is watching this case. If a former president can steal classified materials and face no consequences, why should anyone else follow the rules? The entire intelligence community depends on universal enforcement of classification laws. What happens next will define American democracy for generations. Either we prove that no one is above the law, or we prove that the law only applies to people without famous last names. The wheels of justice are moving now. Grand jury sessions are scheduled, though officials close to the case suggest indictments could come as early as next month. Additional witnesses are being interviewed, and somewhere in Washington, Justice Department officials are drafting what could be the most consequential legal document in American history. Today, I watched a daughter choose truth over family loyalty. Tomorrow, we find out if America can choose justice over political convenience. The system worked when it mattered most. And it worked because one person decided that protecting the Constitution was more important than protecting her father. But there's something else that happened in that courtroom that changes everything about how this case moves forward, something the media missed completely. During a 10-minute recess after Ivanka's testimony, I observed Trump attempt to approach his daughter. Secret Service intervened, but not before I saw what passed between them.
No words were exchanged, but Trump's expression was pleading, almost desperate. Ivanka's response was a slight shake of her head. She turned away. That silent exchange told me everything I needed to know about where her loyalties now lie. When court reconvened, the prosecutor asked one final question no one saw coming. Ms. Trump, are you aware of any other family members who have information relevant to this investigation? The silence in that room was deafening. Ivanka looked directly at the defense table, where Trump sat between his lawyers, and I watched his face transform from desperation to resignation. Yes. My husband Jared documented several conversations he had with my father about document security protocols. Trump's head dropped into his hands. The weight of the moment was visible. Not just frustration, not just defeat. This was realization, the kind that comes when the game you thought you were winning slips entirely from your grasp. Jared Kushner is not just another family member. He is not some peripheral actor in this saga. He held the highest security clearances in the previous administration, access to the nation's most sensitive intelligence, knowledge of operations that span the globe. When his testimony enters the record, it will not read like family drama. It will read like a roadmap of systematic violations, protocols ignored, procedures bypassed, oaths broken. The implications are staggering. This is not theoretical. This is evidence of someone entrusted with protecting the country's secrets actively undermining those protections. Every question Jared answers, every recollection he provides, becomes proof of potential jeopardy at the highest level. The defense team understood immediately. Panic set in. They requested an emergency conference with the judge. I've seen this move before. In organized crime cases where a single piece of evidence shatters months, sometimes years of legal planning. This is not a calculated strategy. This is damage control. This is scrambling when your entire case has just imploded. The courtroom waited. For 47 minutes, the conference went on. And in that gallery, filled with reporters, congressional staffers, intelligence officials, everyone sat in stunned silence. No whispers, no gestures, just the quiet shock of realization they had just witnessed a constitutional earthquake. Think about that for a moment. A former president, his closest family members providing evidence that contradicts his sworn statements, that exposes violations of laws designed to protect national security. That could reshape how we view the enforcement of the highest laws in the land. And the public gallery, the people who came to observe, understood immediately the gravity. This was history unfolding in real time, not through social media posts or sound bites, not through press releases or talking points. This was legal reality asserting itself, demonstrating that accountability can reach the most powerful, even when the accused believes he is untouchable. When the judge finally returned to the bench, her presence alone underscored the seriousness. The courtroom was not just a room for trial anymore. It was a theater of consequences. Every participant knew what just happened would be studied, dissected, and remembered for generations. This was not politics. This was not family conflict. This was the Constitution in motion. And Trump, for the first time in that courtroom, the performance stopped. The bravado, the theatrics, they fell away. In their place, the weight of accountability, the reality of law, and the undeniable evidence from those closest to him. It was the kind of moment that redefines a case, a presidency, and perhaps a nation. Here's what most Americans do not understand about classified documents. It is not just about keeping secrets. These materials contain information that, if compromised, could get people killed. When Ivanka described her father sharing details from CIA assessments with unauthorized individuals, she was not just describing document mishandling. She was describing potential treason. The phone records Ivanka provided as part of her cooperation agreement tell a story that is impossible to ignore. Calls to foreign nationals, made within hours of Trump reviewing classified intelligence briefings. The timeline is damning. Read the document. Make the calls. Discuss operational details with people who had no security clearance. Every step, every action leaves a clear trail of potential national security compromise. The courtroom was silent when the judge returned from her conference. The instructions she gave to the jury were unprecedented. She told them, in no uncertain terms, that what they had just witnessed represented testimony of the highest national security significance, that the jury should weigh the evidence provided by family members with extraordinary care. Her words were precise, careful, legal code for something extraordinary. The testimony is credible. The testimony is devastating to the defense. This was not a routine courtroom reminder. This was a signal that the evidence presented is both accurate and profoundly consequential. Every whisper, every gesture, every detail Ivanka revealed now carried the weight of national security. Every photograph, every call log, every recounting of her father's instructions was a blow to the defense's narrative. The judge's instructions made one thing crystal clear. The jury was to take this evidence seriously, not just seriously, but with full recognition of the stakes. This was not about family drama. This was not about political theater. This was about the integrity of the nation's intelligence apparatus, about the consequences when a former president handles the country's most sensitive information like a personal playbook. The courtroom understood the gravity. Reporters, attorneys, spectators all felt the shift. The rules had been set. The stakes had been raised. The message from the bench was clear. Credibility, clarity, carity, and the truth of national security violations would guide this case, and nothing would diminish the weight of what had been revealed. In that moment, the defense's strategy, the carefully planned narrative, the arguments about oversight or forgetfulness, all of it faltered. The judge's instructions were a spotlight on the heart of the matter. The jury now had the authority and the solemn duty to treat this testimony as the bedrock of the case. And everyone in that room, even the former president himself, understood the implications. As court adjourned, I watched Trump's motorcade leave. For the first time, he did not stop to speak to the media. No claims of witch hunts, no attacks on prosecutors, no confident predictions of vindication, just silence and the slumped shoulders of a man who knows the game is over. This was history unfolding, not in headlines, not in tweets, but in law, in procedure, in the solemn declaration that truth and accountability are paramount even when the truth comes from within one's own family. Tonight, somewhere in Washington, Justice Department officials are calculating the political cost of indicting a former president whose own daughter just provided evidence of ongoing criminal conduct. The decision they make will echo through American history for generations. The system worked today not because it is perfect, but because one person decided protecting her country mattered more than protecting her father. Tomorrow, we find out if that same principle applies to an entire nation. The trial continues. The evidence is overwhelming.